Welcome back. I am in the town of Hannibal, Missouri for the Homesteading Life Conference with Doug and Stacy. And this is the house that we are in, thanks to Doug finding this place. This is an Airbnb, and it is an urban house. It's a very old building. And I was looking at the yard this morning when I was having my cup of coffee, and I thought, what would you do if you lived in this sort of a situation? Postage stamp yard, big old house. How could you feed yourself out of this yard? And I was just having all these ideas, and I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna have Rachel grab the camera, and we are going to do a quick video on what does it look like in a suburban or an urban lot where you don't have acres and acres. What could you grow, and how could you do it? Property line looks like it's right here at the corner of this fence. So you have this tiny little piece of grass. Well, the first thing I would do is get rid of this grass, and that doesn't actually have to be a difficult thing. You could easily lay down cardboard over this area or dig it up and remove the grass with a spade and a fork and get some plants in here. But we are having erosion happening right here. So the first thing I'd want if I planted this area was to have something deep rooted, that's strong, that can hold this up here. So I would want some sort of a permanent shrub that's not going to damage right here. So what could we put there? We could put a clump of raspberries or thornless blackberries or a gooseberry shrub right there, or maybe a Nanking cherry, which is a very nice sour pie cherry, makes really good cherries, and it would be pretty. You could put one here, and you could put one on the other side here and have two shrubs to stop this erosion, because you do not want to be growing anything annual or anything that could be washed out through here. So another possibility would be to put in an edible creeper. There's a creeping raspberry you could put over here, or you could just put in a few pollinator shrubs just to make something beautiful. But this little patch right here, if you pay attention to the fact that it would erode here, you could even do some small swale work right here and kind of corrugate it a little bit and grow on top of it. This area up here, I would probably stick to a lot of herbal, medicinal, culinary kitchen plants, and just actually make a little herb garden, kitchen garden right through here, and then across here, probably with a couple of apple trees that are pruned small, or another tree that you could keep under control in this space, because you could have a couple little trees that you could work around with some pretty beds. You might even make spokes out like this with some little access in between. And just remember that you do have a little bit of a slope, so you do not want bare ground. You want roots in the ground at all times, because even if you mulched here and it didn't have bare ground, chances are you're going to get a little bit of wash down to here, and you don't want that to happen. But you could put some small trees, you could put some strawberries, and you could put in all of your beautiful perennial herbs, and then some pollinator plants to bring the life in, and also to add a pretty aspect to the road here as people come up. Plenty of space to work with. Another possibility would be, hey, let's put a bird bath right here in the middle, and then let's make our spokes of edibles out from the center of that. And probably I would put a foundation hedge of some size right here. Maybe some more Nanking cherries, maybe some blueberries. You could even manage to fit in a small basswood here and just cut it repeatedly for a salad green. Basswood grows actually incredibly here, so it can get gigantic, but it's a possibility. You could put in a mulberry and keep it pruned back. I would probably stick to the small stuff in your shrubs, mostly up here, and just work in this area. This is not a lot of space, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not even 7 across here, so 20 feet by maybe 15 feet. But you could get pretty much all of your culinary and high nutrition herbs in here with a couple of fruits, and just make a little gilt system right up here. And the whole thing could be done with sheet mulching. You don't even have to take the grass out. Just sheet mulch over the top of it. Let's go down the steps and take a look at what it looks like from the front of the yard. Now I've seen some planted swale strips along the edge of the sidewalk here and there through this town, so I would assume it's not against regulations to go ahead and replace this with something other than grass and weeds. It's not a lot of space, and you do have trash getting thrown into it. You get your cigarette butts and the occasional bottle, and of course you get the pollution from the road and the splash back up. Not some place where I would really put edibles. I would probably concentrate some pollinators and butterfly plants up here and make a pretty street side space where you've got a bunch of life as much as possible, and again, you want permanent roots in here, and then that permanent bank of beautiful pollinator plants, which you're going to have to mulch over in the winter. This is a cold climate here. This is zone 6. Not as cold as some of you guys, but cold for us. You know it's going to die out, so just have a little bit of mulch that you can mulch through here and cover it up and let it look terrible through the winter, but hey, the grass is going to look terrible too, right? So put your pollinators here, concentrate them, and then back here in the yard you could get into doing all of your culinary and medicinal and probably some vegetables too. You can always fit in transplants of just about anything. A couple of eggplant, a couple of tomatoes, cabbages, a little bed of carrots. Mix in whatever you want. You know, if you have more than enough herbs, you can just change it. That's actually a good bit of space, 15 by 20. You could do a lot if you improve the soil. The soil is going to be key to this entire thing. And with all the greenery that I see around here and how thick the grass is and lots of hardwoods around this area, you're going to have good soil here. You're going to be able to grow just about anything you want that fits this climate. Here on the front steps, there's these two little pockets. Right now they're full of gravel, and they have some oxalis and some wild violets that have popped up, which is better than nothing. There's a little spurge over here. But these two spaces right here, you could put in strawberries if you wanted to. You could put in some cane fruits and bind them back, or you could put in some herbs, or you could put in something that's from a climate that's a little bit warmer and trust that this being surrounded by concrete here might push the zone a little bit. You might be able to keep even a rosemary alive. It's hard to keep them alive here, but it's possible. But you've got this little space here that you don't want to waste, and when you have a very small yard, you know, use what you can. Put a little something pretty right there, something useful. Probably comfrey. The front of this building faces north, which is not the best for plants that are needing a little bit more heat, right? So it actually can be better for plants that you want to bloom later in the season. So it's just something to think about. You know, you consider it as you go. But what that does mean is that the backyard where you're going to do your serious growing is actually facing south, which is a really good thing because it becomes a warmth trap. So let's come along the side. This is all concrete here, and it's only about 3 feet across, so there's not a lot that you could do right here. However, I would be very, very tempted to put some maybe foot-wide bins that are like this tall, fill them full of soil, and run some small trees. You could do a little espalier. You could do vines all the way up this wall. Look at all this potential vertical space. That's a lot of vertical. If you were to grow some, man, I would be tempted to put Dioscorea polystachya over here. Got to find a way to fit in a yam. So let's put in a yam and put in a pot that's big enough to put those roots in, and then you get all those yam berries off of the wall. That'll be your primary harvest. And I would probably take the trellis up to about 8 feet or so we could still reach it. But there's a lot of potential space right there. It's just hard to reach and pick anything that goes that high. Maybe kudzu. That's a nitrogen fixer. I definitely didn't tell you to plant that. Come around back here, it opens up a little bit. There's a seating area. Not much space, but you could probably fit in some pot gardens right here. Just put some big pots in. Some stuff that'll take half shade. It's going to get the morning light to about noon or so, and then it's going to be not quite getting enough light. We've got some shade from this big tree right here. And there's a little sitting area here which I would leave for people to actually live in, because we can't just fill all human spaces with plants as much as we would like to. Come back here to the backyard. This is where I got excited. This morning I came out here and took a look at this yard, and I went, look at this, is a blank slate surrounded by privacy fencing. There's a structure back here that burned on the other side. There's a lot full of weeds. A lot of that is actually lamb's quarters. I looked at it this morning. There's an empty lot back here on the back. The lines for the power are hanging quite low, so you have to keep that in consideration. But you've got enough space right here that you could do a couple of grocery row gardens. I would run them, the slope kind of comes this way, so run them along here or a couple along the back. I think I would be tempted to run a couple of grocery row gardens on one side here, and then I would work on intensive annual beds. And along these fence lines, I would put a tree every 12 feet with a little shrub that's edible in between. So if you can imagine it, a little apple, little plum. Back here, you're gonna have to put something that can take a little bit of shade. So I would put a pawpaw right there. That hackberry is not a problem. Put a pawpaw in. Along this back right here, look, there's another tree, another tree, another little tree, another little tree, another little tree, all the way around the outside. So you use this linear space, which is currently not being used for anything. And then in between, man, it wouldn't take that much to make this yard super duper productive. To keep yourself fed, I would probably put a little chicken house back here, confine it, but put deep litter in it. So all these leaves and everything that fall, I would put them over here, put them over there or over there, and fill it full deep litter. That's going to make your compost. They're going to keep turning it, turning it, turning it. They're not going to be able to forage in this yard. You don't have enough yard. You're going to end up wrecking your gardens if you let the chickens out. But then you get yourself some animal protein from all of those wonderful eggs you're going to get. You might even just put ducks in a duck house. That's another good one. And then the ducks could manure the water, and then you could use that water to just go and water all your plants back here. But if you think of this in terms of bite-sized pieces, you've got a little sitting area right here, probably with access down to a basement right here. There is a window out of the downstairs kitchen here, so if you didn't put your chickens, if you put your chickens over here, you could look out the window and watch the chickens, or it could be, you could even put it right here and it would just be like a chicken fish tank. Of course, the whole thing would get covered with manure, but maybe, you know, maybe that's interesting too. It could be. I would probably put some pretty flowers and stuff right there, and then I think put the chickens in this back corner. But if you think of all the little beds that you could make in here, I would make a winding network of pathways that are going through, or you could grid it out if you prefer a grid, but make them into little pockets or islands, one piece at a time. The grass is thick, it's got mixed weeds in it. There's plantain, wild violet, clovers, oxalis, and other species mixed in. But the actual soil itself is obviously pretty decent. Again, we've got hardwoods all around here. Those tree roots are going to get in this yard and they are going to wreak some havoc. But that's not a big deal. You can overcome that. Up against the back of the house here, you don't really have much space, but this is your south-facing wall. So this being zone 6, right here is zone 7/8. So if I wanted to grow peaches, I would try to figure out how to fit a peach in, probably right here, and then train the branches over this way, over the top of the window. This pocket right here is warmer and won't freeze nearly as hard as it will right here. So that's something to think about. There's enough light here to do a decent garden. It's not perfect because we do have some cover, but it's not terrible. These trees are old and they're falling to pieces. So they're not densely covering this space. You're going to do better with greens than you are with all the fruiting stuff. But the fruiting stuff you're going to have to watch during the course of the day and see how much shade you get through here. But you should still be fine probably, especially if you don't stick to the edges of this. So think about all the beds you could put in here and think about what calorie crops you could grow. Jerusalem artichokes are really good here as a crop because they're very easy to grow, but I would probably grow them more as a chop and drop. I don't like to eat them very much. I would stick to white potatoes as a primary source of calories, and then sweet potatoes later in the year. You could grow a lot of small melons, you can grow a lot of small fruits and berries in this space. You could probably fit in a chestnut tree if you're really careful, but that's pushing it. You're probably better luck with putting in a hazelnut or two, maybe fitting some bushes in along the edges. There's a lot that you could actually do with this space, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't have easily 1,000 pounds of food coming out of this yard after a year or so of work. It just is going to take some creativity, and it's going to take some soil building. Just keep building up, get all the compost you can. This being in an urban, suburban environment, there's going to be tons and tons and tons and tons of fall leaves. You could literally go and pick up fall leaves and cover this entire backyard with leaves this tall, and then make your beds the next season. As that stuff has started to rot down and continue to rot down into the soil, you could keep it all mulched. There wouldn't be any space for weeds in here. Your effort would be concentrated over a small space instead of a gigantic space, and you could be absolutely ridiculously productive. Good soil, moderately long growing season, a lot of beautiful temperate species that you could choose from, and here you go, you got your beautiful urban garden. So that's what I was dreaming about this morning, and I thought, you know what, I'll share that with you guys and just kind of do a walk around of the house. So thanks for joining me. Appreciate you all being here. Be sure to like and subscribe and all that stuff. And until next time, may your thumbs always be green.